Contention 1 is the capitalist state. 8 point is political disempowerment. Few people know of nullification and the status quo. The state has incentives not to reveal their individual power. That is Matthews. And 14, juries permitted to nullify the law by saying by the letter of the law the defendant is guilty, but we also disagree with that law. Defense lawyers are not even allowed to mention nullification. This cannot be discussed as Hankling handed out pamphlets on nullification. He was charged with jury tampering. Nullification is feared because of its ability to upset the system. The B point is capitalist exploitation. The conditions of private prisons affect 2 million people that are disproportionately minority groups. That's Pelias. And 14, organizations are condemning exploitation of prison populations of 2 million, mostly black and Hispanic, are working for pittance. The prison industry doesn't need to worry about strikes or insurance. Workers are full-time, never arrive late. If they don't like 25 cents an hour, they're locked up in isolation cells. Private contracting fosters incentive to lock people out of the system. Fees upon itself and condition are due to an outgrowth of capitalism and racism ingrained in the private prison system. That's Harnett and no date. Conditions are much like plain such as slave labor, which are atrocious. Prisons have been linked to forced labor due to the empirical needs of a rising capitalist privatizing. Here the prison one of its fundamental links between prison slavery and capitalism not been proven effective rehabilitating lower crime rates and most profound escalation of violence among young men. C point is the influence on the state. Private companies are able to influence legislative policy through massive funding, especially successful since state and federal government are extremely fund-strapped right now. That is JPI and 11. In order to ensure they have stable share of incarceration, prison companies engage to influence policy. Companies shape the behavior around privatization. Prisons, criminal justice companies give millions of dollars to politicians, $135,000 to federal candidates and to state-level politicians, $6 million. Companies are offering policymakers wages or to transfer rather than reduce with the government operating under record deficits. Companies establish connections, pitching private prisons as a lower cost alternative. Companies support incumbents who will win, and they also have huge political connections in both the legislative and executive branch of the rest of the government-run areas. That is JPI 2. Arguments that political contributions have little influence ignore the relationships that influence policymaking and appointment of company officials and friends. Companies have been able to gain access to the executive branch. Firms are involved in formulating new policies, drafting new legislation that strengthens their bottom line. Contention 2. Jury nullification ought to be used in the face of perceived injustice in the United States criminal justice system. And nullification solves. They give the individual more power and reclaim the government away from the capitalist private prison system. More violent means just paint themselves as a large target, which makes taking down of capitalism impossible. That's Whitehead in 15. Those who describe the armed revolution make themselves easy to target first be taken by the military police who are trained to kill and arm you, engaged by novel guerrilla attacks, employee resistance, civil disobedience, take by grassroots activism, nullify everything the government that does that is illegitimate. Nullification is premised on the idea that ordinary citizens and not officials should have the final say. Nullification acts as a check on runaway authoritarian criminalization laws should also reflect the citizenry as opposed to the for-profit driven priorities of corporate America. With every ill inflicted by over-criminalization, militarized police and private prisons, it is money that drives the police state, and private prisons are an outgrowth of capitalism that are incentivized to keep incarcerations high to make money. Nullification allows the individual to reverse that trend and break away from that capitalist saddle. That is FIJA and 14. Private prison depends on high rates of incarceration. The present themselves as just meeting the existing demand for prison beds in the market conditions. U.S. jurors should be aware that not guilty can be vetoed by laws, but also can prevent this unconscionable enslavement. Nullification. One tool we have to push back against corporate welfare collected off of harmless people. A single conviction can trigger harsh penalties due to mandatory minimum judgments. Cannot require jurors to deliver a guilty verdict. Jurors cannot be punished for voting upon their consciences. And our strategy allows for resistance through the law by using the letter of the system against itself. The juror can take advantage of the fact that under the text of the law, one innocent but least to acquittal, which allows the individual to take agency away from the court system. That's Cripso 4. Overcoming to the law involves sticking to the letter of the law in connection with the act. Technically, criminals carried out to facilitate smooth running of the law. This places the third party in double length AC to demand they disrupt the running of the law. If the third party refuses to make an exception for the fantasy that supports the law's bronze light and rhetoric, any effect of the law itself will falter for a lack of broader public interest in sustaining it. Impacts. 8 point nullification applies here by abusing the fact that one innocent results in acquittal. We are able to individually interrupt the capital state that grips us. Right now, as individuals, we can use the text of the state laws against itself. B point. This means that passing new policies cannot solve only just confidence in the overtly capitalist system of conviction itself can push back private prisons, just legalizing something or banning the prison simply serves as a palliative that the state government can use to justify not doing anything in the future. And nullification is distinct from policy reform. It is individuals demanding to the federal government for change that is key to subvert the impacts of the justice system at large. That is Verrillo in 15. Nullification is not about reforming, it is about convincing ordinary people. They can upset the whole class of for-profit apple cart. Citizens can refuse to be part of the system. Nullification cannot reform law so much as we explode it from within via ordinary people. Nullification has the potential for radical change. Juries will be the pitchforks and torches that the police cannot stop. Next is impact framing. Our framework is that the judges and intellectuals that reject capitalism, this relentless criticism allows for capitalism to be challenged. That's Covell 2. Relentless criticism can delegitimate system and release people's hopes has a symbolic effect far greater than external consequence of rupture of capitalism's effects can propagate very swiftly. Inertia can trigger rapid cascade changes. Change not to be incremental but exponential. Radical criticism can be a material force but can seize the minds and masses of the people. There is no greater responsibility of intellectuals. So the role of the ballot is to endorse the debater who best rejects capitalism and hierarchy. This outweighs other framing does not account for class biased nature of ethics. That's Lorente 03. Judgment is universalizable if a principle holds for any similar person under similar circumstances. The problem concerns the contradiction between the demand for unified sociability as a guarantee for fairness and impartiality, the inherent justice and unfairness seeking universalizing class divided society insists on universally imposed upon very different burdens on agents, and thus it proves inherently unfair until all exploitation by people is ended. Morality cannot be generalized. The result is a triumph of a system moral was intrinsically unfair and classifies one class system interest and dominant. The corresponding obligation to express the dominant class interest corresponding moral code becomes the not code of universal class-based morality. Class divisions typically the condition necessary for a principle universalizability in order to function. Oh, by the way, I did not read the highlighted part, I read all the underlined bulleted stuff. And our discussion should be based on finding change in the empirical world that can change the tangible conditions of oppression. That's Curry and 14. Despite debate, point to real discussion, because adjudication one ideal theory over the other, the contextual chasm, the actual problems high frame, most obvious call for a paradigm system, the actual what is considered normatively abstracting. There needs to end your discussion about concrete nature of oppression. What distinguishes ideal theories, lines of idealization to exclusion, or the actually connects the complexity of social problems totalizable and a set of theories in a frame endorsement whereas the action to such problem their world does not command us to do X, but also other ideas that complicate the conditions addressed by the action, and the advocates for the verse further on competing interpretation no abuse or enemies. 8 point key to ensure proportional part from negative theories and tangled claim drop the debate if their prayers the entire runs collapse later that checks theories used as strategic class of philosophers topic debate. B point whose uniqueness for the app negos solid bidirectional interpretations of deterrence is key. C point the app is already sure for reading about theory systems in 1 hour is about a quarter of my time by the minute of the one in C is a sum, so there's a structural check against abuse. Didn't read the analytic.
So can you just check everything you did take it out?
Yeah.
So you didn't read the 2 analytics underneath of Curry, and you read all of this part.
Yeah. No. Oh, good. You deleted the highlight.
Yeah, great. Yeah. Ready? I want you to concede that you don't get an RBI on no abuse and I meets. I'm not gonna read.
Offense to a counterinter. Just RBI for offense to counterinter.
Yes, that's all.
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So are these only app specific, or are these for everyone?
These are affirmative specific.
Okay.
They're specific to the app because it talks the B point and the C point justify uniqueness for the app.
Okay, but they're not. I can still get an RBI as well. I just had to justify.
Yes, you can.
Okay, cool. Let's go through the app. So what does the app do? Like, do you defend a shift from the status quo?
Yeah.
So you say at the top that the reason why the state has like this information is that people don't know about nullification. Do you inform people about their right?
That's an effect of the plan. Yes.
Where is that envisioned in the plan? None of your solvency is specific to informing.
Like the solvency indicates that in a world in which people would use nullification.
Sure,
it doesn't say no. Look, the plan mandate is not to inform people, right? The plan mandate is just a world.
Matthew 14:7 evidence says that people do not know about nullification. How do people know about nullification?
The defense of a plan is a defense in which people would use jury nullification, right?
So why would people use jury nullification if they do not know about their rights?
Like jury nullification is not like a federal policy that like the United States federal government says to do, right?
You make a uniqueness claim that people do not know about their right now. What stops them from, or what makes them not know about their right in the future? Like, why would they just suddenly nullify after the app?
Because an effect of the plan in which people would nullify would be that they are informed about it.
Okay, so
right? It's not the plan mandate.
Okay, so where is the solvency? Does it say informing people solves the plan or solves the impacts you talk about?
Sure. So the FIJA evidence indicates how specifically how it's able to like resolve the impacts of like private prisons.
Can you read me from the line where it says informing is good?
Like the card doesn't talk about like.
And that's part of your advocacy, and that is the core part of how your solvency is. I think your card should talk about informing people.
It doesn't talk about informing. That's like a result of the plan, dude.
The Curry argument says that discussion should be based about empirical world and tangible conditions of oppression. This argument just says that non-ideal theory is good and ideal theory is bad. Why does that mean that like tangible oppression is the biggest impact?
Like I don't really understand.
Sure. So your argument says that. Ideal theory is bad because it relies on an exclusion of, like, for example, the histories of people. Why does that mean material oppression comes first?
Yeah, so the argument is the reason why we should account for these material conditions is because that is what people are experiencing in our very non-ideal world, right? In a world in which we refuse to talk about the tangible things that are happening in our very non-ideal world. Okay, those are very simple. Those are basically like the ideal theories that Curry like criticizes.
Pardon? What's the warrant for why the conditions are due to capitalism and racism?
like the Harnett evidence?
Yeah, can you explain
the
that?
Harnett evidence just says that private prisons are an intersection of capitalist and racist
What's the warrant?
Sure. So the reason is because, for instance, in the status quo, the private prisons, they pass very racist policies.
Do you just defend acquitting people of jury nullification, or do you defend convicting people as well?
Like, jury nullification doesn't result in convictions.
I want you to defend disadvantages to conviction.
Nullification, like the topic, nullification, by definition, cannot convict people. You can't say the law is unjust, so we'll convict you. That's not a part of the topic. If you are going to read that theory show, that's just like a really bad one.
That's fine.
is the only tournament that draws it. East Coast, West Coast, and Texas. Who cleared for straight?
Just Sean.
Who's he debating?
Grant Brown.
I've never seen Grant, but where's he at?
Okay, 103.
Flow.
Yeah.
This crap over.
Yeah, just ended.
How much? 103.
Let's call it 1NC JC.
Yeah, come. So, how many sheets of paper am I gonna need?
2 off. Do you mind if I like use this? Right
Yes,
here?
you can use it. Well, I'll just scoot. I'll just this then. Or you can like move the 2 tables if you want. Or I'll just scoot that. Pardon. Sorry. Jason Yang, 1NC. 1NC. Jason Yang. Okay, great.
That would make the most sense.
Okay.
What's the order?
2 off AC.
Which of the 2 off would you say is longer, the first one or the second one?
First one.
Alright.
Is everybody good to go?
Yeah.
Are you good to go?
Mm-hmm.
Identifying yourself as a cause of action is continuing with the idea of rationalization. Course guard. Conceiving yourself as identifying with the principle on which you act on. Suppose you have desire A, B, and incompatible. You exercise principle do A. You regard the choice as your own activity. You only regarding the principle as a third thing. Then you would have the cause of action. Agency requires identifying the principle on which you act on. The negatives, methods relating you from universal principles like practical reason in particular cases, and adapting these universals when they apply. This specifies the agency of all individuals irrespective of their background and benefit. A Kantian could insist that distinction needs between judgment and the principle. The latter must be guided by universalism. Acting in universal law can be performed as acting in a way that takes into account the perspective of everyone else. The moral principle enjoys to view each person with respect to their standpoint. This is beneficial. First, the recognition of relevant situations. Second, the exercise of moral imagination. Third, the interpretation of one's action in light of history. And thus, the method text is combating impression through universal principles such as practical reason and universality. Thus, the role of the judge is to be a facilitator of dialogue between the universal and particular other. This is the only way to have social progress benefit too. The ethical project is to increase everyone's capacity to articulate their standpoint as they see fit. Such articulation perhaps learning and information. Other practice information can only take place through learning to take the standpoint of the other to account all mechanisms of universal ethical theories to articulate the principles of moral and political life to guide that into which we navigate. Additionally, prefer the method first universals abstract morality to link to these subjugated histories and make sure they're including ethics, moral, AC Christ, and inclusion of both Pensky. Universalism and perspective bridges abstract conceptions about universalism. Universalism refers to that context, capacity of self-determination, examination, and criticism. Individuals' histories and identities are concrete and woven from experiences that cannot be reduced to abstract formulas. Particular life practice can anchor universal transformation and expectation of particulars, and could not take away the universal standpoint. But also directly respond to the current analysis because that do not cause any exclusion. The whole point of the NC is that we include particular circumstances into it, and we also include the universal. Second, after discourse between this getting ethical, it's nearly impossible to justify norms like racism being good, which makes my method uniquely good benefit for. We must respect multiple possibilities of democratic integration. Politics are a case where their rights are restated by new excluded process of democratic integration necessarily result in political action might be one to endorse. Universal norms are mediated by the self-understanding local communities availability of norms increases the threshold for justification which formally exclusion practices are submitted. It becomes increasingly more difficult to justify practice exclusion by democratic election. And now the offense. First, jury nullification inherently means less meaningful deliberation about the actual verdict. Correndo 13. Erwin Horowitz conducted a study involving 45 mock trials, 2,207 jurors, and 3 different criminal cases. Analysis yielded that juries spend more time discussing nullification and significantly less time considering the evidence. While standard pattern jury types return on to not guilty awards, the R9 juries voted to convict in every single instance of the jury operating under R9. The defendant was perceived quite unfavorably. Juries who received nullification were more apt to disregard or downplay any exorbitant evidence and lead to more convictions. Also turns case because they had just have more bias and they watch not do the nullification that you try to say that they will, i.e., they will not always nullify in the instance. For example, in terms of capitalism and the private person industrial complex that you say. And jury nullification allows juries to avoid deliberation with other jurors and to make a decision based on their preconceived notion of the situation instead of justifying their decision amongst themselves, which empirically leads to more cogent decision, which the evidence accords with the verdict standards 08. Many norms have a simply substantive position that reflect the values that are embedded in reaching essential social norms. Jurors bring the decisions not formally legally influence or decision. Jurors bring script that are contrary to the instruction of their decision making. Legal scripts may be acceptable to jurors, but they provide different calibration of outcomes using the script. Jurors do not constantly make trade elements in the sense that they know causation of the evidence is too weak to sustain a verdict for the plaintiff, but nevertheless find the plaintiff because of a defendant's clear negligence. When jurors work together decision making, there's a bidirectional effect because we're to get evidence of evidence and reality to achieve a coherence with the major decision and constitution of it, and eventually cannot thus be said to exist whether comparing values subject to the values in the trade-off calculus. Next off is a critique. Reforms never happened despite theory because the bipolitical state is arisen about traditional modes of social control and flow information is self-inside by cyber apparatus obsessed with knowing everything can know what the revolution population represents. Any reform invisible committee 1. In the United States, there are more prisoners and farmers. Public space covering companies not only surveillance possible, but it's becoming acceptable. List of assets circulate from department to department. Such places now military market ties or chapters have been transformed into recombined administrators and have new micropolitical legal control. Meanwhile, police pursue mistaken issues. Their promotion of discourse makes our movements vulnerable and invincible. We'll get crushed. Invisible committee 2. When leftists make their cause more available, they're doing exactly the contrary of what should be done. Instead of turning anonymity to their advantage through conspiracy to be socially nothing is done. The condition for maximum freedom that what we available to strongly become strange thought that our firmly specifically links because he says we need to work within the system. It's not the link is not that we need to work with this and the fact that you try to reform the state within is the bad thing. Now skip the next card. The alternative is the white noise. The politics that deprives the violent state of information needs to flourish. Invisible committee 3. Threats supposed to be limited. The informational changes should be no pretty informing information distinct from noise because the information can be signed a certain code and given off uniformization in case where no evidence can be brought down. A reduction of the margin in predictability is made. The assumption is decrease the social noise to provoke panic means extending the background inference, which makes a recording of discrepancies by the ensemble of cybernetic analysis. To provoke panic means extending the background inference, which makes the recording of discrepancies by the ensemble of cybernetic apparatus is popular. Resistance to non-condensed interference is a vector role. Haste disrupts coordinates. Reduction makes it instrumental what is violence visible and what is invisible. Five means revolt possible turns the by causing infinite violence, the root cause of institutional racism cloud. The powers of existence are made to pass into a classification scheme and determining advocacy controls the transform the subject of the disciplinary disability population that surfaces profiles bodily capacities. Politics turns power grasp from the individual subject of life. The body takes account for each population carrying out various population in order to estimate the value of life. It is the normalization of power which exercises all certain right to kill. By politics permits healthy life of a population necessitating the death that marked as a nature's degenerate or unhealthy one. Racism and deployment each and every time a differentiation made by media caregivers. Racism is informatics and essentially the very technology by surveillance and security which presently operate to base population do so by monitoring body politics and information proliferating as total terrorism and information access awareness and technology. Now go to the role of the ballot. On the club, what evidence you say that we need to reject any types of capitalism? First, the answer because on the higher layers, it's just a method of how we do this in the first place. My argument is that in order to solve oppression, for example, like capitalism, we need to have an engagement with the particular and generalized other, which my framework is key to. Second, this argument is not warranted at all. It just says that, for example, that capitalism has bad impacts. Does not even have a appeal to you, so there's no reason why this impacting it is just an assertion that oppression is bad, but there's no actual warrant for it. Now, on the next argument, you would say that the cloud theory, the cloud 3 card, the first argument is that we solve back for these issues. You say that this has class-based issues, but class is irrelevant under the NC framework because we just talk about whether those people are human or not, which means that it solves the entirely critique because we don't need the empirical conditions that you talk about. Second, the NC comes out higher layer because no matter what the AC does, this is a cross application of the benefit for evidence because you can still justify things like bad machines, you can solve so the root cause of depression. Now, your arguments first abstraction. So my argument is not complete abstraction. It's not complete ideal theory. My one would say we need to have a relationship between the two. Second, the argument that he makes is that we need to have total non-ideal theory. That is obviously a worse position because we cannot actually solve the root cause of oppression, which is the oppressors in the first place. We cannot convince those people, then we cannot do anything. Now, on the line by line of the case. On the Matthews 14 evidence, first, this is the reason why he can never solve. He says that jury nullification right now is the reason that reason doesn't happen is because they're not formed. If you do not get any clear application of why he informs them, and none of the solvency is specific to that, then you do not vote on this argument. Error negative issue if it is not in the solvency arguments. Now, turns to the first jury nullification causes first jury nullification is causing states to deny people the right to jury win. Juries can influence the law through nullification. Repetitive jury nullification clearly states to the government we disagree. Threat nullification has led prosecutors to lobby for laws that take away the right jury right. This is unintended to cause the jury revolt because instead of reforming the system, lawmakers who responded to take away the choice from the people and put it in the prosecutor's hand. That turns the entirety of the act because you cannot actually allow them to have the right to the jury in the first place. Next, second, no offense in majority cases never even go to trial. Well, you put 97 jurors who willingly code against evidence in majority cases never even go to trial. Most ended guilty plea right offense for living agreement instance of nullification are very enough. But much argument so change that's criminal defense of the act because you can actually solve the capitalist independence that you talk about. Even if the state is bad, there's no way that you can solve it through jury nullification because there's not enough instances. If he does not show you, he has no bright line for this means we should air neg on this issue. Also, he's going to try to tell you that the reformism arguments, he's trying to leverage reformism argument that it's not through the state. The whole point is that if you go anywhere within the state, the whole point of the critique is that you cannot have any reforms if the state's bipolitical, which means that you cannot solve any of the impacts of the AC.
Are consequences relevant under your framework?
No.
The NC?
No.
Why not?
It's a question of the process of an allowing of deliberation, like the procedural aspect of it, not of whether like more deliberation happens.
Wait a second. But your Hirano evidence says that a world of jury nullification would result in juries thinking less, right? Isn't that like a consequence?
I don't think so. My argument is that it just destroys any possibility for deliberation in the first place.
Wait, so what's the warrant for why they intend to have less deliberation with
It's
nullification?
not based off the intent. It's not like an
Wait,
intention.
then what's like the
consequence
offense? Then what's like the
It's
offense?
about the
argument?
procedurals
It's not-
of having deliberation in the first place.
Like, what does that mean?
So a procedural, like for example, is like the conditions that allow for deliberation right now. My argument is that jury nullification destroys the conditions that allow deliberation in the
Okay,
second
sure.
world.
So what are those conditions?
That the point is not a condition. There's no condition. My argument is that it destroys the possibility of having deliberation at all.
Why?
That's the offense.
Yeah, so can you explain, I guess, let's start with your Hirono evidence. What's the offense why jury nullification completely destroys
The
any
point
jury's
is
kind of,
that
like,
there's no
discussion?
deliberation if they just because they always use their like intuition on things and bias because they don't.
Isn't that already deliberation, using your intuition? Is that, how is
My argument is
intuition
that that's
not
a bad form
deliberation?
of deliberation.
How? Like, where's
Because we
this in
don't
the
actually
NC? Like,
Sorry,
where's this
what?
in the NC?
That is the card.
The card says deliberation is bad.
Yeah, so there's two
Where?
implications. First, there is less deliberation.
No,
Second, there's worse deliberation.
yeah, it's less deliberation, but why is intuition deliberation bad?
Because
like,
you
where
don't,
in
no,
the
the
card does
argument
it say
is that they
that?
don't have any deliberation because they base it off their preconceived notions
Okay,
of what
sure,
the jury thinks
sure, that's
instead of
fine.
actually
Okay,
like,
the next
considering
card. What's the
evidence.
warrant in your standards evidence?
So the standard evidence says that right now, like social norms tell them to like they influence their decisions. I.e., for example, if like they saw the news or
Why is
something.
that bad? Why
Because they don't
are
consider
social
the-
norms influence bad?
Because then they don't actually like deliberate about the evidence and care about the evidence. Instead, they will use their biases from like outside sources to make a decision instead of using their own. Like,
Can't there be out bias from outside sources even if they're not like? Can't there be biases like independent of like the law?
What is it? I don't know what you.
Like,
mean.
can't there be biases even if they're not biases related to whether or not the law is just? Like, can't there still be bias on a jury anyways?
Yes, but my argument is that
So how is that
uniquely
unique?
you uniquely cause more bias. That's the whole point.
Okay, by introducing like a new type of like
The
way
point
of
that
making
you say, like
choices.
for example, one jury person can acquit, and that makes the case go all the way. That point of that framing in the first place is what allows for there not to be deliberation.
Okay, cool. Okay, cool. And the link on the critique your invisible, is that your invisible committee evidence?
It's the first two. I didn't read the third argument.
Yeah, sure. So what, can you explain your first link?
So the first one
Why
is
do
just
you-
that reforms never happen because the state is always by.
So it's a reformism link.
Yes.
So what causes reformism to be bad?
Sorry. What's the question?
Why is reformism bad?
The whole point is that reformism will always fail and increase the power of the state.
Okay, can you define reformism real quick, just so I know what your link means?
Like my argument is that like trying to change the state and how they operate.
Change
right now
the
in the state.
change like what the state does,
Yeah, that's entirely what
like
the basic
federal
tries to do.
policies. Is that reformism?
I would say that is, yeah, that
Is
was like part of it, like the prison industrial complex and things like that.
Oh, okay. So enacting policy change is reformism. Is your argument?
No, it's not like policy change. The act doesn't advocate for policy change. The whole point is you trying to change some issue about the state. is
Okay, so
bad.
doesn't the alternative advocate for change?
Yes, that's not the same type of change I'm advocating. Change
How-
is good, but the way that you do change is bad.
Why?
That's the.
What's the
links.
distinction between the change of the app and the change of the alt?
So the alt is a politics of secrecy, i.e. we deprive information from the state. We don't let the state co-opt our movement like it does to yours.
Yeah, but what's the distinction? Like, what's the distinction?
Yeah, yours is like in the open. The state can always co-opt your movement because you have to work within the state by using their
Oh,
laws.
so does the alternative work outside of the state?
No, it works within the state, but we deprive the state of information that it necessarily uses to be bipolitical in the first place.
Okay. What were your responses to the Lorento 3 evidence?
That was okay. The first argument.
That was the card under the Covell evidence.
Yeah, the argument was one, we solve these issues because it's race, and for example, is irrelevant under my position. It's just a question of whether like you are oppressed or whether you're ethical. For example, whatever socioeconomic status you have is not relevant to my ethic. The second argument was that there's no way that you can solve the root cause of like the bias arguments that you talk about because you cannot actually convince the oppressor that they are wrong, which means that my argument is uniquely key to actually solve the root cause of the oppression that you talk about.
Okay. Okay, stop prep. 51 left. Order is the case, the critique, and then the NC.
Is there anything new?
No new cards.
You said you're starting on the app?
Yep. Yep, the AF, the critique, and then the NC.
Okay.
We're on the app.
Mm-hmm. The impact of the AF, then the framing. Okay, so Jody's ready. Button ready?
The impact of the 1AC is 2 million people that are suffering at the conditions of slave conditions in private prisons in the status quo. The Joel notification is able to solve because it allows for individuals to quit individuals off of this crime in the first place. Because the only reason why they're going to crime to enter the prison in the first place is because the capitalist system is saying that we need more people in private prisons so that way we can make money. Joel notification is able to reverse that trend. That is the crib evidence and the FJ evidence. Now onto the line. You say your witness evidence which says that nullification causes state to control the faithful minorities. So no, it is but no, our Varela evidence responds to this because it indicates that nullification is a world in which you're able to act independent of the state because the state has no control over whoever can actually act independently. Second is the second response to the Cripps evidence, which indicates that we are using the letter of the law against itself. Technically, what we are doing is technically legal, but is able to destabilize the state. Your second card is the Leopold evidence. But one, this is entirely inevitable. People would still do plea bargains in the status quo, and would still do plea bargains in the status quo. Anyway, second is that nullification allows for a necessary shift because in a world in which we're able to nullify all of these things, obviously people would realize that they're not going to prison, so that would be able to resolve these plea bargains. And next is impact calculus. The NC proves that the 1AC impact proves that the NC is terminally non-unique because there's absolutely no deliberation in a world in which capitalism exists because capitalism is able to control the way that we deliberate. That is our Lorento evidence, which indicates that the way they're able to deliberate, or the way that you're able to have lines, is constrained by the way that you actually have the type of money to access the rights in the first place. Your arguments are really bad. You say the cost is not relevant under framing. That is exactly what Lorento is talking about. Whenever you try to ignore these type of class things based history, that is just proof that you are abstraction away from reality, which was a reason to reject the NCA and all of your offense. Your second argument is that we need to talk about the universal first, but even if you're correct that we need to talk about the universal, that is exactly what the U1AC is critiquing. Furthermore, you concede our role of which indicates that the role of the judge is in order to reject capitalism, which means that it's a necessary constraint on the NC. Now onto the Creek has an overview to the link level. The link is nowhere specific to jury. Is not at all specific to jury nullification, which means that you should permutation do both. We can make the white noise as well as doing nullification, which puts him into dropping the alternative strong enough to resolve the residual links into so big, or be the alternative so weak is not able to do anything. Now back onto the link section. There is absolutely no link. It is not reformism call for the extend the Varela evidence, which you have conceded is extremely good. It says that it is literally not reformism. It is shattering from within. Our Cripps evidence also speaks to the call it after there's absolutely no link. Second, link turn to the affirmative is a way that we can specifically cancel back the type of reformists of the state. We are currently rejecting the types of reform that the public policies have attempted to do in the past, which definitely proves which is definitely net benefit to their turn, which outweighs your link on specificity. Now onto the NC cross supply that your NC is terminally non-unique. But here's a few. But now onto your off your course guard evidence. First is that you said you have to do universalizability in that people are indicators of their own action, but no, people are not. There are definitely infinite types of there are infinite types of particular things that can affect your action. For instance, how much money you have. That is exactly what capitalism, which means that it alters the individual action. See the thesis, but if it goes down, you say the Behadid evidence and talks about universalism, but universalism is a bad cross-applied or Lorenzo analysis over there. Now onto the contention of the NC. Your Lorenzo evidence is literally garbage. It does not talk about how. The only argument is that it would reduce it because people would act upon their bias. But we have already won that it is more likely that jurors will be trying to acquit for the particular for the crime in the status quo because the impact section indicates that it's more likely that the crimes will be done by the capitalist state than by the individuals, which indicates that they will be acquitted, which means that disproves your bias argument. Second is that you have no argument why intuition is necessarily bad, and also jury nullification is not just saying we should a priori nullify everything. It is just saying whether it's just saying nullification is a particular option, which means that the 1AC allows us to combine the analysis of the court case as well as analysis of the law. That is definitely two types of engagement that we can do, whereas the NC only the NC only has one.
Okay, I had 103. Starting now. So wait, what was the first argument on the NC?
The contention argument.
Yeah.
The terminal uniqueness argument.
What is that?
Yeah, so the app controls terminal uniqueness. There's no engagement or, what is the text of your standard? Like, the text of your standard in the status quo. Because the capitalist private prison system is able to control all the discourse on the public policy level.
Okay.
I cross-applied the impact of the app on that section. The second argument...
So, which one of these turn the NC? Any of them? Do any of these turn the NC?
Yeah, the argument that I say turns the NC indicates that they are able to do a type of analysis. Nullification, the advocacy of nullification is not we nullify in all instances. We only would nullify in the context of the resolution, which is perceived injustice, which means that they have to analyze not only the court case of whether or not they're guilty, but they also need to analyze the law, because they need to determine if they perceive an injustice in the first place in order to analyze it, which means that they have two different types of analysis, whereas you only have one.
Okay.
So that is link, turn, and weighing. The other ones are defensive.
What was the second argument?
I'll just answer that argument. So the argument is that they're not able to. There's no impact to intuition's bad in any of your cards. It doesn't talk at all about intuition, and intuition is an important type of discourse because obviously intuition tells us that particular things are bad, like the horrors of like criminal justice system, etc. So intuition is important.
Order's going to be AC, top down, then the NC, then the critique.
Top down.
Yeah. Starting on like the Matthews
No,
14.
pencil here. Sorry. Alright. AC top down. NC critique or critique NC?
NC critique. Great. Okay. Everybody good?
The round is functionally over. He's conceded the Matthews 14 evidence that the problem with the status quo right now is that they're not informing people. He has conceded that he does not inform people through the plain text, which means he cannot solve the entirety of the links. The Matthews 14 evidence, and you can extend that for the across the flow, because that's a reason why he can never solve the impacts. There's the reason why they do not nullify right now in the status quo is because they are not informed. You cannot just increase that they will. You cannot just be out that they will nullify. Insofar as he has not conceded that response, that is terminal defense onto the entirety of the case. Probably should have responded to that. Now let's go to the line by line of the turns. Extend the first argument. They extend the turn. Nullification causes states to nullify. Deny the right to people during the first argument. Makes it the Varela argument that nullification is independent of the state. No, my argument is that prosecutors specifically will deny the right to allow for juries in the first allow for the right to jury in the first place, which means that jury nullification cannot exist. And if my argument is true, because juries, the jury system itself will not exist because there will be right to juries. The defendants will not be able to have a jury in the first place. The second argument is the Crips. You leverage the Crips argument that they will allow a new agenda against this, and that people the state is still bad. But that's not responsive to my argument. My argument is that right now, the reason why people do not want nullification, prosecutors don't want nullification, is because it causes reformism in the state, like your Varela 15 argument. My argument is that the unintended consequences they will just take away your right to trial. My argument is empirically confirmed. Insofar as that is true, that is the reason why you can never win the case, because then there would be no jury anywhere, which is conceded argument. Now the next argument is the LIPO 97 and extend that the majority of cases never even go to trial. That is also defense against the AC, because you can never solve for anything. The first argument you say that there's still plea bargains in the status quo. That is not responsive to my argument, because jury nullification will never solve the capitalist impact, which means that your impact is non-unique, which means that you cannot vote off the AC even if it's non-unique. That's not relevant, because my NC framework does not care about that argument. The second argument you say is that shift because nullify these things. My argument is that the fact that, like, for example, 2.228% of cases go to trial means you cannot solve the private like prisons companies that actually happen in the status quo, which means that you cannot solve any of the evidence. Now I just need to take out your arguments on the cap debate, on the roll about debate. You are not doing nearly a good enough job on this argument. You haven't conceded on the Lorenzo. You try to say the Lorenzo evidence. So this is the exact problem because you just say abstraction. But there is no impact of why abstraction is bad. If you do not get that extrapolation from the current analysis, that is the reason why you do not vote off the argument. Also, you conceded that abstraction is good because it is necessary to include the universal, which actually allows us to solve oppression by allowing us to convince the oppressor that they are wrong. The fact that you conceded that is criminal defense, and the reason why your method to solve oppression is bad because you cannot solve the root cause of it, which is a conceded argument why I solve better. Now, the next argument you say is exactly what you were doing because you're trying to critique that problem in the first place. But my argument is that class-based issues are relevant on NC. It's just a question of whether you're human, whether you're subjugated, whether you're ethical in the first place. The fact that we can ignore these racial problems is the exact reason why we solve it best because these issues are they're not issues anymore underneath the NC framework. Now, the fact that you can now do the NC. Even if I'm losing arguments on the AC, he's done not enough job on the additional reason to prefer the method. First, extend the Petsky argument that universal is not abstract morality to link to subjugating history. That's also takes out your abstraction bad argument because my argument is not abstract. It's a question of how we apply these particular histories. And the whole one is you were just right now thinking this is a generic conf framework. No, it's not. It's very specific that we need to include these subjugated histories into our language means not abstract. The next argument you consider the better before argument with that discourse after discourse between the subject and ethical. It is impossible to justify norms like that is a conceded argument. I'm the only one that can actually convince the oppressor why they are wrong. Now the offense. The offense is very clear. He has no actual offense on this. These are just the defense at best. The only argument you make is a non-unique claim that you try to spin as a term that the capitalist system tries to the capitalist system stops all discourse right now. That is not offense for him because he does not solve the capitalist system in the first place. Because I want sufficient defense on there. But you are not weighing that against the contention of large side. So the first argument you make is that juries there's none right now. Obviously that is false empirically denied because we have deliberation right now. My argument is that in the status quo we have the ability to do that. We do not have it when we have jury nullification specifically, which takes out that argument because we can still have some sort of deliberation. My argument is that we have worse deliberation under the NC. The second argument you make is that it takes it out because for example, there's no reason my intuition is bad. I'm not going to go for the intuitions argument, but I will win that the fact that you have conceded that they spend less time on the evidence, which is a conceded argument. Now, extend of right on 13, the journalification inherently means less meaningful deliberation about the verdict. Here, you prefer my evidence first. It actually takes into account real studies when people do the issue. The point is that people spend more time actually discussing the idea of jury nullification instead of the evidence that is actually presented. That leads to less deliberation because they have false convictions. You can see that turns case also because it will lead to more convictions, for example, and more acquittals, which are actually not true and actually not just in the first place, which takes out your argument. Now, the next argument is the Sanders OA evidence. You have not done anything to this. You have conceded that this empirically leads to more cogent. So a system without jury nullification leads to better decisions, which are net preferable under the NC. The argument here is that when we have jury nullification system, then they don't actually have the ability to actually they just use like grading scripts and they actually do things contrary to the instructions that they are given by a judge in the first place, which means that they uniquely disregard things like the discourse that they're given to by the people in the actual system, which means that you can never solve your arguments. Now on the critique. The only argument on the critique is that you say the first argument is that it's not about a speech, it's not about a reformism. My argument is that any way to change the state is the way that I'm talking about reform. You say the state is bad. My argument is that you cannot say the state is bad without while working within the system. That takes out your first argument. The second argument you say is that we're rejecting the state and we're rejecting like capitalism and things like that. But my argument is that this is solvency deficit. I'm kicking the alternative. He did not ask me for the condition, but I will go for this as solvency deficit to the app, which means that is a takeout argument. The phrase to extend the invisible committee one that reforms never happened just by theory because the bipolitical state is risen above traditional modes of social control to control. The argument here is that you right now with the status quo, the evidence is very good. Call it says that right now the state is very bipolitical, which takes out all your arguments because the state will never reform itself, i.e. the fact that they're capitalists right now, they want to keep the private companies because it benefits them very well. That is the whole point of the argument, which means that takes out your argument right there. Then the second argument that you conceded that the prohibition of discourse makes our movement vulnerable and visible, which means that your movement uniquely will get co-opted because you try to work within the system by changing the laws and working with the laws by breaking them. The fact that my argument is like it's very highlighted by, for example, the Witten 15 evidence on case that people will just get rid of the right because the state does not want the change to actually happen, which is terminal defense. I do not need to win the alternative. He did not ask me the condition, which is the permutation is irrelevant under my position, which means that I'm clearly winning. The overview here is he needs to win offense to the AC. To have offense on the NC, which he does not. It's just a non-unique claim. He has no offense because I have at least a risk of offense. If both of us are winning, I have offense to the rollabout on the aft and rollabout to the neck. This is like an epistemic honesty argument. You should evaluate the neg argument because he has no offense, so I have 100% strength of link back to the my rollabout, but he has no offense back. If at least I have some sort of offense on the AC, that is a reason why you should prefer my arguments. Also, he needs to win offense. He's conceded terminal defense on the AC. Even if the argument was not that great, it was framed as terminal defense and it was conceded that way. It means he can never solve.
Alright, how much time did I have? 50 more.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Starting now. Okay, so order is going to be the NC. Or I guess technically speaking, it would be like the after critiquing the NC. Well, because I'm like kicking out of stuff.
Okay. Sure.
Alright, Judge ready?
Yes.
When ready? We will concede that the 1AC has no solvency, but under the NC, since consequences are not relevant, if I can prove under the NC framework that jury nullification would still theoretically be able to produce these type of like deliberation, then that means you're going to be able to win under the NC framework. The critique was conditional, which means that you have no uniqueness for any of your links because you need all the alternative in order to win uniqueness for any of the links. So that means the alternative impacts are all non-unique. You also phrase them as only solvency deficits. Yeah, we're looking at the anyways. Now onto the NC framing issue on the NC. You can see the link term which the NC step discussion about the justice of the law is important. Nullification, here key framing issue. Our advocacy text is not that we would automatically nullify in all cases. It says that we nullify in the context of perceived injustice. How do we get perceived injustice? The injustice has to be determined individually by the juror. That means that the juror not only has to take into account the evidence or how probable it was that that the defendant was actually guilty, but they also have to take into account the broader scope and the broader context that the law has onto it, which means that we are able to have two different types of analysis. Jury nullification is not at all mutually exclusive with the type of evidentiary analysis that he talks about with the 1NC, which is embedded weighing analysis that was also conceded in the 1AR. This was not the argument that I was trying to spin as capitalism is inevitable. That was just a terminal uniqueness argument, which was distinct. That was the number 2 argument. So that means if we can win any risk of defense onto the NC, which was any risk of defense onto the NC means that you should default to the affirmative link term on terms of strength of link because that was conceded. So you go for a few pieces of arguments. You talk about the Carreno evidence, which talks about how jury nullification would result in less thinking, but that fails to account for the context of the affirmative advocacy text. The affirmative advocacy text indicates that we are only talking about perceived injustices. They would not auto nullify. You should call for the advocacy text after the round, which is clear risk of defense. The second argument talks about specific types of biases and things like that. But you fail to address our argument that indicates that the bias would actually not specifically happen because the bias specifically flows in both directions, which means that jurors would argue against each other if your arguments are true, and that type of argumentation you do not impact that as any type of bad discourse. Furthermore, you also can see the argument that not unique the NC, which indicates that jury nullification independently, even if we abrogate the entirety of the analysis and discussion about the particular case, is that it allows for intuitive like discussions about how the case ought to be done. We would intuitively determine that it is not just to send this person to jail for over 2 years for simply just possessing marijuana. You have not impact turned this argument, which indicates that at worst, which indicates that at worst, jury nullification allows for a type of intuitive like analysis on the issue, which has not been weighed against the NC, which means jury nullification and the analysis of whether or not they acquit are both equally valuable. The affirmative is functionally allowing for both of them because because the app is not mutually exclusive. Again, call for the plain text. It's perceived injustice. You can't find the justice to be perceived if you don't analyze the case first. Good on.
Can I see the full AC and NC speeches? You guys email me?
Yeah, let me see. What's your email?
Or I'll just type it in over.
I'm gonna take out everything I did for you.
Yeah, do that.
Yep, same.
If you wanna like look before.
Let me just leave the document.
Isn't there a flash drive that has mine?
I do have a flash drive. Okay.
I'll just type my email.
Yeah, of course.
Do you have my email?
Yeah.
The 1AC?
Yeah, it's the whole AC.
Alright, cool.
I'm gonna do cars in the 1AR.
Yeah, I didn't get any cards.
Okay, I sent it. Nice. Do you guys want anything?
I sent it.
Yeah, I haven't gotten the next step yet before the I'll be ordering a Gmail.
Yep.
Yeah, it should be here.
Yeah.
I'll just email it to you.
Okay, thanks.
Or wait, if it's on the flash drive, I can just
Yeah,
give you the flash drive. It's called. Let me just make sure. 1NC Jason. Yep, that's it.
Thanks.
Alright, 1NC Jason here.
He just gave me the. I didn't get your email, but he just gave me the flash drive. So.
Okay. Do you have everything